Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to a view replay courtesy of WZ-120 here, and this time around it's the new Chinese Tier 8 premium tank destroyer. Now I'm going to have to be maybe a bit more careful about the words that I use than I was in the STG video. In that one it was looking at the stats and basically comparing like for like. I think overall that vehicle is more balanced than some of the other premium Tier 8s that we've had over the last months. But it still feels, compared to its contemporaries, compared to the other 122mm medium tanks, even compared to say the Object 416, it feels stronger than them, and it doesn't suffer particularly for having that big gun. Well, in this case I think I'm a bit more confident in saying that this really does seem like quite a strong machine. Now, as with the STG, I don't actually own it, I haven't actually played it, but looking at the stats, comparing it to its peers, comparing it to the other premiums that are available, yeah, it seems pretty good. And it's not any one particular thing. It seems in this case that it's just the all-round package. I mean, with the STG, if you took away that 122mm gun, it would be a fairly middling Tier 8 medium tank. There wouldn't be that much special about it. It was the gun that was the standout thing. In this case, it's a bit of everything, it seems like. Now, there's not really anything at Tier 8 directly to compare it to. The nearest I can think of is actually the SU-122-44 at Tier 7, only with a considerably better gun. It does seem to be a very similar style of machine. It's a medium tank chassis as opposed to the regular line tank destroyer, which is actually on the WZ-111 chassis, so a heavy tank chassis. So it's got good mobility. It's got a pretty good 122mm gun with 440 average damage. It's got pretty good pen. It's got not great aim time, but the accuracy and the bloom after firing all seem to be pretty okay. It's also got I think pretty good camo values. It's got a pretty good base view range, and it seems to have, like the 122-44, pretty reasonable armour. It's not going to bounce higher tiers necessarily, but for lower pen guns, absolutely you'll get some bounces, and all that kind of combines to make a tank destroyer that can actually be pretty good on the offensive. And it doesn't quite have the DPM of the 122-44, but it's not that far off. It's still one of the better DPM tank destroyers at Tier 8. So, on to the actual match at hand, and he's only fired one shot so far against the S1, and one of his teammates has then taken it out. But the minimap itself is not looking that good. I mean, Freezer's basically taking the opportunity to move across the valley floor and come up and use that firing line of allies that are back there on the other side of the valley. But the fact that there are those 4 tanks there means that up in the northwest, because this is an encounter game, the rest of his own team are fairly outmatched. Now, it's not entirely his team's fault, I don't think. The enemy team had one more heavy tank, and the enemy team also has considerably more armour at the top tiers. Their only armoured heavy tank, really, or well, tanks I suppose really, are the IS-3 and the T-26E5, and they're facing off against a 10 Chrysler GF, an IS-6, KV-5, Lerva, and a Tiger II. The rest of the heavy tanks on this team, I mean, Carnarvon, FCM, T-34, none of these are particularly well armoured, but it wasn't, I don't think, enough of a disparity to make that big of a difference. It maybe gave the enemy team a slight advantage, but it's more the positioning of his own team, basically. And he did say that ordinarily he'd have been up there in that corner himself, but he decided to try something a bit different. Now, a bit different in this case means he's been able to already rack up nearly 2,000 damage and take out the enemy arty, although I think an HE shell into the side of that GW Tiger P would have accomplished the job in just one shot, and it would have been a lot more efficient than having to use 2 AP shells, although an AP shell could have done it as well if RNGs had rolled at least an average amount of damage. But As it is, he's had to use 2 shells, and it's not like this thing has a huge amount of ammo. And like the 122-44, you can fire through it fast enough to get through all that ammo in the course of a match, if you're not careful. So he's lost most of his team at this point, very careless of him, and it's left him in the situation where he's still full health, and a lot of these enemy tanks are rather damaged. So this isn't a terrible setup for a potential carry. But he has to play it right, he has to be smart, and this is particularly where the mobility of this thing is going to come in useful. And there are some other mobile tank destroyers at tier 8, but they typically have far less armour. I mean, the Scorpion G is a bit faster, but has no armour. And then there's, of course, the Kanonen Jagdpanzer, but this thing just outclasses the Kanonen Jagdpanzer in, I think, virtually every way. There might be 1 or 2 stats where it's better. I mean, just in terms of raw speed, it's certainly better. But in all other regards, I would say this is probably by far the superior machine. Anyway, so that T-34-2 took him rather by surprise. That's the first damage that Frieza has incurred so far. And at this point, I'm not entirely sure what he's doing. It might be he's faking out, it might be a little bit of indecisiveness, but it looks like he's going to go the other way, and then he turns and catches the T-34-2, trying to come up behind him, and also the IS-6. And as both of them are easily a one-shot for this 440 Alpha gun, well, boom, there we go. And it's not like he's struggling for penetration. You've got about the same level of pen as the Scorpion, even if you don't have quite the Alpha damage, but you've also got a much bouncier tank. He actually bounced that IS-6 shell, and it's about that level of gun, you know, that the armour is actually effective against those kind of 175 pen guns. So there are times and places when you can absolutely afford to use that mobility to be aggressive and just to push. So he's trying to spot at this point. There's 3 enemies left, and so if he gets all of them, that's a potential Radley-Walters and a potential Kolobanov's medal, so that won't be bad going. And because this is an encounter game, it means they can't cap quickly, but they can still try and force a cap, so he can't be too complacent. So instead of try from the north side of the valley, he actually then transits across. I think possibly Frieza has optics on this machine. I'm not 100% certain. They obviously don't have any binos, because we'd be able to see it, but if they had optics combined with the premium food, that might well give them, I mean, it would give them a good view range. I'm not sure offhand what view range it would give them, but it would easily be over, oh, I'd say 420 meters ish, maybe even a little more than that. I'd have to look it up. So he took care of the 110 with an HE shell, so that amount of damage, it was guaranteed to work. But at that point, we didn't know where the third and final tank was. But as it is now, there's 2 on the cap, so we know where they both are. And that maybe tells us that perhaps they're both low damage, low health enough to also be one-shots. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. His teammates weren't doing nothing, you know, it was a bit of a rout, but they did enough damage to bring about this set of circumstances where with a high-ish Alpha tank destroyer, it becomes easily doable. So as it turns out, the 111 is definitely a one-shot. Another HE shell should do it, but unfortunately, I don't know where he catches that, like on the gun barrel maybe, but he goes to his AP and is easily able to punch through the frontal armour without any issues whatsoever. And that just leaves the T-44, who is going to seriously struggle to pen Frieza frontally. Now at this point, Frieza himself, you know, the adrenaline would have been going a bit, and I'm sure the T-44 is in a similar state, so you do sometimes get shots like that when you're struggling to keep your cool, when you know that everything is on the line, the match all rests on, you know, it's all come down to this. So both of them, I think, are a little bit fidgety, a little bit trigger happy, But as it is, the T-44, I think, goes for it, maybe thinking they'll be able to get around Freezer, but no, they just don't stand a chance. The T-44's fairly well outclassed by this thing, apart from the fact that it has a turret, of course. So with that final kill, that gets him the Radley-Walters and the Kolobanovs, which is not half bad. He also gets a Defender, a High Caliber, a Top Gun, his Ace Mastery, and that was his 3rd gun mark as well. And considering this thing hadn't been out this long, to get 3 gun marks that quickly, I think Freezer must have been grinding it fairly exhaustively. So 5,286 damage done, 8 kills, almost 1,800 base XP when it was a fully tier 8 game. There was no bonuses from damaging higher tiers there at all. That's a pretty impressive result, but it's the kind of result I think that you could get in this that you just couldn't get in a lot of the other premium tank destroyers at tier 8. Even a lot of the regular tank destroyers at tier 8, you would really struggle to do what Freezer was able to do there, just because they don't have that combination. They don't have that complete package of mobility and firepower and view range and decent camo. So is it overpowered? I don't know. I don't throw that word around with the STG, and I don't think the STG is overpowered. I just thought it was power creeping a lot of its contemporaries, and this definitely is power creeping its contemporaries. So yeah, I don't know. This one does feel a bit too good. I would have to play it myself to know for sure. But just looking at the stats alone, yeah, I would take this over pretty much most of the other premium tank destroyers at the moment. Maybe not the Scorpion, but yeah, it's pretty good. Maybe a bit too good. Anyway, so hopefully you enjoyed Freezer demonstrating this machine for us, and if you did, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.